Sarah and her family arrived at the cabin in the woods, eager to start their vacation. The woods were quiet, with the only sounds being the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze. As they unpacked, Sarah noticed an old man watching them from the edge of the woods. He looked ragged and angry, with a face etched with deep lines and a scraggly beard. Sarah shrugged off the old man's presence, thinking him to be just a curious local. However, as the day wore on, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. She began to notice strange sounds coming from the woods and a faint smell of decay in the air. As the sun began to set, the woods became eerily quiet. The family settled in for the night, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She heard the creaking of branches and the sound of footsteps outside the cabin, and her heart began to race with fear. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the cabin, and Sarah's brother screamed in terror. They rushed to the window to see an old man wielding a chainsaw, cutting through the door of the cabin. It was Harold, the old man from the woods, and he was out for revenge against Sarah's family. Sarah's heart raced as Harold's mad cackling filled the air. She knew that they were in deep trouble and that they would have to fight for their lives if they were to survive the night. Harold's chainsaw roared as he burst through the door, his eyes wild with rage. Sarah's family scattered, screaming in terror, but Harold was relentless. He pursued Sarah's brother through the cabin, cutting him down in a shower of blood and gore. Sarah and her family were thrown into chaos as they realized the danger they were in. Harold's twisted motivations were revealed, with his son having died in a hunting accident involving Sarah's family years earlier. Now Harold was out for revenge, and he would stop at nothing until he had punished Sarah's family in the most horrific way possible. Sarah's father tried to fight back, but he was no match for Harold's strength and skill. He fell to the ground, bleeding from a deep wound on his leg. Sarah's mother tried to help him, but Harold was upon her in an instant, his chainsaw tearing through her flesh like a hot knife through butter. Sarah was the only one left, and she knew that she had to act fast if she was to save herself and her family. She grabbed a kitchen knife and made a break for the door, but Harold was waiting for her outside. The two engaged in a deadly game of cat and mouse, with Sarah using her wits and agility to evade Harold's attacks. But Harold was a skilled hunter, and he knew the woods like the back of his hand. Sarah soon realized that she was in a fight for her life, and that she would need all her strength and courage to survive the night. Sarah ran through the dark and unfamiliar woods, heart pounding with fear. She could hear Harold's footsteps behind her, getting closer with every passing second. She knew that she had to find a place to hide, or she would be next on Harold's list of victims. In the darkness, Sarah stumbled upon an old abandoned cabin. She rushed inside, hoping to find some place to hide from Harold. The cabin was dark and musty, with cobwebs covering the corners of the room. Sarah's heart raced as she searched for a place to hide, but Harold was hot on her heels. As Sarah hid behind an old armchair, she could hear Harold's chainsaw buzzing just outside the cabin door. The sound was deafening, and Sarah knew that it was only a matter of time before Harold broke through and found her. She clutched the kitchen knife tightly, ready to fight for her life. Suddenly, the chainsaw stopped, and there was an eerie silence. Sarah knew that Harold was up to something, but she didn't know what. As she cautiously peeked around the armchair, she saw Harold standing outside, holding a small fire in his hand. He was trying to smoke her out of the cabin, and she knew that she had to act fast if she was to survive. Sarah watched in horror as the flames grew higher and higher, filling the cabin with smoke. She knew that she couldn't stay there any longer, or she would be burned alive. With a deep breath, She sprinted out of the cabin and into the woods, trying to put as much distance between herself and Harold as possible. As she ran through the woods, Sarah felt like she was being watched. She could hear Harold's footsteps behind her, but she couldn't see him in the darkness. She was running blindly, hoping that she would find a way out of the woods before it was too late. Suddenly, Sarah tripped and fell, her ankle twisting painfully beneath her. She cried out in pain, knowing that she couldn't outrun Harold any longer. She looked up to see Harold standing over her, his chainsaw buzzing menacingly. With a sickening grin, Harold raised his chainsaw, ready to strike. Sarah closed her eyes, ready to accept her fate. But then there was a sudden flash of light. Harold stumbled back, dropping the chainsaw, as a group of hunters emerged from the woods, guns drawn. The hunters had been tracking Harold for weeks, and they had finally caught up with him. As Harold was arrested, Sarah collapsed to the ground, relief flooding over her. She knew that she had narrowly escaped with her life, but she would never forget the horror that she had endured at the hands of the old man. In the aftermath of the terrifying ordeal, Sarah struggled to come to terms with what had happened. She had narrowly escaped with her life, but the trauma would stay with her forever. The hunters had taken Harold into custody, and the investigation into his heinous crimes was just beginning. Sarah spent weeks in the hospital recovering from her injuries and receiving counseling to help her deal with the emotional scars left by her encounter with Harold. She found solace in the support of her family and friends, but she knew that she would never be the same again. As the investigation into Harold's crimes continued, more and more gruesome details emerged. He had been hunting and killing members of his own family for years, using his chainsaw to inflict unspeakable tortures on them before consuming their flesh. The community was horrified by the revelations, and many wondered how such a monster could have lived among them for so long. Sarah eventually returned to her normal life, but she knew that she could never forget what had happened. She made a vow to never take her safety for granted again, and to always be vigilant for signs of danger. In the end, the story of Harold and his reign of terror would become a cautionary tale, a reminder that evil can lurk in even the most unexpected places. Sarah hoped that her story would inspire others to be more aware of the dangers around them and to never let their guard down.